As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep.
Put pucks in deep.
We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
It is our pleasure, ahead of them winning an upcoming Emmy, hopefully, to welcome on AJ Oscarson, the lead producer from A Clean Sheet, the 6-part documentary series following Gabe Landeskog over the past 2 seasons as he works through the radical knee injury that caused all kinds of physical and mental health problems. AJ has been there since the start, and through the use of personal home videos and Gabe's journals, A Clean Sheet pulls back the curtain on a novel return to the ice that we just saw here in this Stanley Cup playoffs. AJ, the director, writer, and editor, did all of the filming, the audio, and the project to keep the footprint as small as possible. But a lot of excitement here as the finale is upcoming. It's been airing on TNT, streaming on Max, and on June 9th, the finale will be ahead of us, and they are now starting an Emmy campaign. AJ, let's start with a welcome aboard here. First, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, thank you so much for coming on with us. We're very excited to get into the details with you.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. It's a fun show y'all have. So yeah, stoked to come on. Bit about me. I work for Fresh Tape Media. We are a Denver and New York based production company focused mostly in the sports and commercial doc space. So clients like NHL, MLB, NBA, Microsoft, kind of all over the place. And I've been there 4 years, and about half that time I've spent very intently on this project.
Talk us through the stages before this show was announced, how the project came to you and kind of came alive.
Yeah, we have a producer out in New York, Avalon Koenig, who saw the photo Gabe posted to Instagram right after the surgery with his knee in the brace, and just sent a quick DM of, hey, we're all pulling for you. We had worked with the Avalanche and Gabe on a couple commercials, and we do a lot of in-arena stuff for the Nuggets and Avs. So we knew him, he knew us, and he just kind of wrote back. He's like, oh, if you ever want to tell the story, let me know. And that flight, he was on his way to Arizona that we cover in the first episode. And then we weren't there in Arizona, but then he flew to Philadelphia to start the rehab process with Bill Knowles there, of a professional that I think a lot of athletes have gone to. He's very popular. And I showed up there with, at the time, it was supposed to be 2 cameras and an audio operator. And then we did that for, I think, a day and a half. And at the end of that second day, he was like, no. And he's like, if we can get it down to 1 camera and no audio, I'm more comfortable. But it's too much, when we sat in his, he had a short-term apartment in Philly while he was there, because, 4 or 6 weeks at a time. And he's like, the way we want to tell the story is not a traditional recovery documentary where, guy gets injured, guy works out really hard, we do a Rocky montage, and then he's better. He really wanted to show the personal side of it and the effect on his family and his wife and the more mental side of it. And to do that, we knew we had to get the camera in the home. He's got 2 young kids, and he's like, I don't want a crew around my kids. It's just too much, which is very logical. So we just trimmed it down to, he'd wear a lavalier microphone, and that was it. And I would just hand hold the camera just like this and just kind of walk around. And then we did that for 2 years.
We've got Matthew Mugno, Jake Swanson, and the anticipated return of Colin Kapoor here, and they've got some deep questions ready to dig in with you here. Jake, if you want to take it off, and we can just rotate around here.
Yeah, sure. And AJ, following around an NHL player, especially to the caliber of Gabriel Landeskog for 2 years, must have been a really fun opportunity, and getting to know him. And I just kind of wanted to know, basics. What was it like working with him behind the scenes? And we've seen all the things in the press and his public appearances, but what's he like behind the curtain?
Yeah, I've had a few people ask me that question of what's the tea, or what's it really like? And it's I sat with him, we've days. I think we were at maybe 40 or 50 filming days on this project, just filming. That doesn't count travel and sitting around at airports and things like that. And then I'd sat and read his personal journals that he's kept over the past 3 or 4 years. And yeah, I mean, I think the person we all know from the headlines and the press conferences and stuff, like, I think he's just actually that person, like his journals, it's like every third or fourth page, he's talking about how much he loves his wife. And then every other page, he's talking about how much he loves his kids. And then every other page, he's talking about how much he loves hockey. He's just like a very genuine person. I think he's very funny. I don't know if a lot of folks see that side of it, but I think he still has a little bit of pause because he's really conscious that English he's still considered his second language, even though I think most people would never know he's from Sweden. Yeah. But yeah, very, very funny. I think it's really impressive how present he is. Like I've been with him in like press scrums in the locker room or at the Eagles games and all these types of events and stuff. And he'll just sit and listen to folks. Even though there's all this noise around him and his phone's going off all the time. He's just a very present person. And I think that's why, he has elevated himself to the position he is in the team and in the league.
Yeah, build off that. Jake, great question about, what's it actually like to get to know Gabe and establish that relationship. Now, as I mentioned, I've done some of these projects at a very low level with athletes, and it can be hard to access a subject. What was the key in this project to not only gaining that access to Gabe, but ensuring that you're getting the right relationship going for a 50-day shoot?
That's a great question. Wow. Yeah, that's a question of somebody who's definitely done these types of things before. Like rapport and access is tricky. I think when we started, we were very conscious of we really didn't know what we were making for a long time. We had an idea of where we wanted it to go, but it's a documentary, and like, who knew? Like the surgery is kind of insane and all that. The big thing we discussed very, very early on was I'm going to be the only camera op you'll see, whether it's Philly, Denver, he's got family in Toronto, the doc is in Chicago. So we're kind of all over the place. And like, that was one of the promises we made as Fresh Tape Media is AJ is your guy. You won't see another camera operator, wherever we need to be, we'll be. And then the second layer was I'm the only one who's going to watch this footage. Like I put it in a secure part of our server. So like other folks, even within our company, couldn't see our conversations. And that was kind of like give me 3 months, give me 6 months. You can say whatever you want to the camera. I'm the only person who will ever see it. And if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel like the right vibe, I'll just delete it or put it on a drive and give it to you, and you can do whatever you want with it. But like only one person in the world will see it until you say otherwise. And kind of to this day, I'm still the only person who's seen all the footage. Other folks have seen cuts and drafts and stuff, and I think that helped quite a bit. I think if you're in front of the lens, you're a bit self-conscious as to like, what is this person going to do with my words? I think now we all see reality in doc work where you can kind of make people say almost whatever you want with the right editing, and just prove like that's not what we're trying to make. And then also, if we wanted to go to that personal space, he had to be able to be a bit more free of conscious and free form with it. And he's just thinking about AJ, the guy he knows, and not other producers or other editors who might be around. What are they going to think? Are they going to view it out of context? Nope. I shoot it. I write it. I edit it. I'm the only one who sees the raw kind of inputs. And that helps. And then, quite honestly, we didn't really talk about sports all that much, which was a kind of a conscious thing. It's like when I was around, we would talk about the family. How was his mental health? How is he feeling today? What's it like, during the various points of like season starting, now it's All-Star game and now it's playoffs are starting and you're missing that. Of like, what are your moods and emotions around that? It was like less so of like, oh, what do you think of like Connor McDavid's season, or anything like that. Is we try to keep it very not hockey focused. Obviously, hockey is imbued in his entire life, so it comes up, but that was also kind of a conscious effort. And I think that kind of laid the base of like, hey, when I'm here, this is what we're going to kind of do, and this is our space, which helped a lot.
And that's a great segue, AJ, into one of the more emotional moments of the entire thing, which was the Avs home opener. Obviously, given what you've just said, you're there at the arena kind of shooting that intimate moment. And when you're in a spot like that, you know, my read on it was that us seeing his reaction was built on months and months or years even of trust built between yourself and this individual. So I'm curious, when you're in that moment as the filmmaker, what was it like capturing that? I mean, it's a vulnerable state, it's an intimate state, and obviously it is augmented by the production part of it of his voiceover and his retelling. But you're also there, and we're seeing this in real time. So what was that like for you to capture that footage and to be, I think, the one person there maybe for him in that moment?
Yeah, that was I think a really pivotal component in our project overall, right? We had talked about home opener, and he had been really hopeful about home opener over that summer. Had a bit of a setback, but I think probably like a lot of folks, either hockey fans, Avs fans, people at Ball Arena that night, I think we were probably all of the same mind of like, boy, it's going to be so great for Gabe. Of like, he's going to walk out. Granted, he's in a suit, but like, he's very beloved in this town. You could hear the chants and everything. I was like, boy, this must be a great moment for Gabe of like kind of toiling in the shadows and just working. So I see how hard he works all day, every day, and to like still get this reception must be so amazing. And then to see him kind of go back into this hallway behind the locker room and turn out that was not the case at all. Nothing against the fans. He absolutely adores the Avalanche fan base and being in Ball Arena. It was just, he feels like he's letting those people down. And I was like, I never even had that thought. So like when he walked off the bench, I kind of followed with him, just of like, that's just what I'm accustomed to doing, of like, I'm just his shadow at this point. And we're just kind of like blown away. And I didn't really know what to do. And I think we turned it down in the audio mix, but there are some like security guards and officers around, kind of in that locker room area. Once they started figuring out, they kind of start backing up. So you can kind of hear people chatter. And then, that was the night McKinnon got the Hart and Lindsay trophy. So you see those kind of walk by as well. And everybody starts to figure out what's going on. And everyone starts to like back away. And I can just hear everyone behind me getting further and further away and kind of going into different doors and stuff like that to the point where there's no one around. And that was to my cue to like, okay, well, I should get closer. And it was really, honestly, a bit awkward of like, I don't know if I should be doing this, even how much we've worked together and everything. And yeah, so I filmed that, and then he did a workout during the game, and then I left. That was it. I filmed for 25 minutes that day, the entire day. But yeah, I went back and I watched the footage at home, and I drove to his place Sunday morning. The event was Saturday night. Went there Sunday morning, and I was like, hey, we should talk about this. Like, obviously I was there. I captured it. I'm the only one who knows it exists. I can get rid of it if you want. But I think if I keep it, we've got to use it. And, he was very candid, and he was like, last night I was not happy you were there, seeing the red light of the camera and everything. But he's like, I think we should keep it because it's true. It's accurate. It's part of the story. Like, this was the point of, it's not a linear thing of like injury, recovery, I'm going to be back. It has these ups and downs, and he's like, that's the whole part of it. And ultimately, I think we were happy it was able to be captured. But yeah, it was definitely like a bit touch and go. But I think it's really important for folks to see that it's an emotional and physical push to go from injury to recovery, or just even injury. Dealing with chronic pain and things like that takes its toll mentally and physically.
Obviously, there's a ton of emotions around any award-winning documentary, and this is a big one. highlighting mental health around athletics, which is something that is more of a recent trend in showing light on, because a lot of times it was athletes trying to cover that up. Now it's becoming a little bit more normalized, but this is something that has an opportunity to really, break waves in that aspect. First, talk a little bit about, working around the emotions. You highlighted it right there, but as you guys prepare for this Emmy campaign, what that opportunity really means to you to be kind of a groundbreaking set on that campaign.
Yeah, I mean, we feel very fortunate. I think just as a production company, I think all of us on this call are a bit in the media in some way, right? And want to tell stories and want probably to tell personal stories and get like what's actually going on inside an athlete's head, right? And so we have got a great opportunity as Fresh Tape to be able to tell this story. But yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I've been doing this a long time. And this is definitely just like a project of a lifetime of, Gabe doesn't really have to do any of what he's been doing over this project. And you kind of see the impact, people have been sending him DMs through Instagram or Twitter and all these types of things through the Avalanche, kind of network, saying, oh, I've got chronic pain, and it's nice to see that there can be a light at the end of the tunnel. Or I've been dealing with this. So like I started journaling too, just to like get it out of my head. There was a woman who got like one of his journal entries tattooed on her forearm, as just like a motivation to kind of keep moving. And I think that's one of his big things, right? Is like, you can be in your emotions. You can have a bad day, you can have a good day, just like a home opener. At the end of the day, you just got to keep moving and just not dwell. You can visit those places, but don't live there. And I think that's simple, but really powerful and also really difficult, easier said than done. But I think he's proven that he's done well at it.
Yeah, and keeping on with the humanizing athletes trend as well. Again, like Casey said, there's been a push to kind of just show the full picture of these athletes that we kind of put up on a pedestal, and sometimes we don't even see them as humans. So we've seen that in the Netflix documentaries and quarterback and receiver, highlighting a lot of NFL players. And then most recently for the MLB side, we've seen the Boston Red Sox inside the dugout. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest storylines there was Jarren Duran and his struggle with mental health. So in terms of humanizing Gabe as a player and as a person, what do you think was the most kind of surprising thing to you coming from an outside perspective of talking about him as just a full person instead of just someone we see on our TV every day?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think one of the things I probably knew before going in, but I don't think we had really any insight into is his kind of role as a father. He loves his children so much. I think he's a great family man. I think his quote has been, I'm a family man who plays hockey, not a hockey player with a family. And to see him interact with his kids who are both still pretty young. Linnea, I think, is coming up in 4 or 5, Luke's 3. But how much motivation he derives from his kids. When they won the Stanley Cup, Linnea was quite small. Luke, I think, was like a year and a half, maybe. So doesn't really remember it. And, he talks in the show of, his dad was a pro in the Swedish leagues and national leagues and stuff, but retired before Gabe could see him play. And he's like, I always want, like, how cool would that have been? And he wants to do the same for his kids who were kind of too young when his injury kind of sidelined him for a bit. And I think a huge motivation for him has been being able to see his kids see him play hockey, and how focused he is on that and how central that is to I think his physical and mental recovery of, like, we mic'd him up on his return back right for the playoffs. I put a microphone on him and Luke was able to come to practice and, like, on the bench, and they're doing scrimmages, and, like, I'm just listening to him, and, like, someone would get up and do all, and he moved down. He's like, I see Luke over there. See Luke, you need to go wave to him, and, like, he goes on the next side. He's like, hey, EJ, do you see Luke over there? You know, and he goes, hey, Nate, you see Luke down there? And it just makes me really happy to see the blend of hockey and family. You know, in my head, like I grew up watching 1980s and 90s hockey, you know, and it was like bruisers and really physical and like just tough guys. And Gabe is undoubtedly a big and tough guy, right? But to see him being on a hockey bench with his boys and still just being like gushing over his little kids and like, oh, isn't this so great that they're here? And isn't this so fun and everything is like, that's just amazing. Like, I just don't know if we see that all that much in hockey. But like you say, that is changing, and I hope to see more of it.
Now, we've talked a lot about some of the emotional aspects of this, and I could ask you a million questions, but I have to ask the nerd question, because the worst seat to be in is the cold-blooded cutting room floor. So you said you were very open to answering any questions. Was there anything that was left on the cutting room floor for the final cut that just didn't work? There are those situations where like, oh, the audio wasn't great, the picture wasn't great, or I don't know how to fit this into the story. Was there anything that you still think about that's on the server that you're like, oh, I really wish that worked?
Yeah, that is a great question. Yeah, there was a scene. I say that as a little written, you know, a moment. You know, we were in Calgary over this past summer that we cover in episode 4. He's staying at Cale Makar's house. And Cale had gone, you know, to be with his mother-in-law, I think, or help. You're like doing something innately, Cale, of like, I'm going to go help do some yard work or something. Like, I'm going to go mow my mother-in-law's lawn or something like that. Like, that's okay. And, you know, it's just like, that is the nicest thing. And the only really shot I used of it was Gabe went swimming in the river and then walked out. And I used that shot in the final kind of mix. But then we sat at the back of Cale's house just on the patio, just the two of us. And we just kind of talked for, it must have been a bit more than an hour. And it started off like, he's like, oh, let's not get deep. Let's just kind of like hang out in the sun. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do that, you know? And that was like minute 1. And by minute 45, you know, he was talking about, you know, he was starting to get really worried that he was letting down the fans, but then, you know, he was worried he was going to be letting down Mel or the kids in some way, you know, who I don't know if he ever could, you know, everyone's so supportive. But that, you know, his fear was just, could be a big problem of like, he had kind of almost gotten to the point of like, I'm not sure if this is going to happen. He'd start talking about like, for the first time of like acknowledging like, and said the word retirement, which is not something I'd seen, you know, in person or read in his journal or anything. It's like, that is just not on the table. And then come August, you know, in the setback, it was like you know, I gotta start thinking about what career 2.0 is. And he was just really worried about the impact it would have on his family and the team and everything. The impact it would have on basically everyone else but him, which I thought was just really amazing. And then we got to the edit, and, you know, the tough thing about TV is you are going to deliver a 24-minute, 30-second piece to the second, you know, and those limitations are tough. And you have to work in 2 commercial breaks, you know, and they have to be between the 7 and 8.5 minute mark. So like, can't start an idea and then go to a commercial for 3 minutes and expect the audience to come back. So it puts you in a tight spot, right? And we talked about that sequence. And finally I was like, I think we just cut it, because we wanted to make sure there was enough time for people to really get, because right after that sequence is a commercial, and then after we come back from the break is that home opener. And I thought it was more important that people have more context for what was happening at home opener. You know, he wasn't having a hard time because he was missing, he wasn't playing. It was this kind of culmination of everything, which everything that we'd kind of talked about at Cale's house had kind of funneled into that. And so we just kind of put it there, but like still some of the like, it's just really powerful footage that like somehow in 6 episodes of TV, you still don't have time.
And you talk about powerful footage, and for me personally, is a very impactful piece of sports storytelling, what I've seen so far on streaming. And I think there's obviously a deeper message in the documentary aside from this is an injury, this is the telling of what happened and the progress thereof. So for you at the storytelling level, and then obviously Gabe at the executive producer level, his kind of say so level, what did you guys want the viewers to take away from the documentary, from his story, and how did that come about? Was it something that you knew going in, or did that maybe that vision evolve over the course of filming?
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's very kind of you to say all of that. When I went to Philly the first time, we went to the courtyard of, it's one of these big apartment complexes, go to the courtyard before we went to the gym. He was still on crutches at the time. And he's like, come out to Philly and we'll just see what we see. And I found I just put my camera on a table next to me just so like I could make a transcript of it. So it's all out of focus and everything. So I didn't use any of it, but we were kind of like, he didn't really know me. And I obviously don't really know him at a personal level. He knew I was part of Fresh Tape and he'd seen me run a camera and all of that. But he was kind of, I think, feeling me out of like, what kind of thing are you trying to make? And I'm trying to feel him out of like, what are you trying to make? Both of us not really saying of like, we don't want to make one of those projects that's just a bunch of clips of somebody working out and then gets better. He's like, yeah, I really wanted to kind of delve into this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, by the end of the 45 minutes, we were both like, oh, great, me too. What level that went to, we weren't really sure, or what that threshold might be, we weren't really sure. I knew the journals existed and he would talk about them, but like I never asked to see them or anything. And it wasn't until maybe like 6 or 7 months ago, he was like, just got to the point where like it'd just be easier if we just read them together and like actually break this thing down and see what we have at another level. And that's when like, the title, like A Clean Sheet, came to the fore, because it's, he's always turning over a clean sheet of ice, after the Zamboni and stuff like that. And then it just kind of progressed where we kind of realized we were treating the camera as a video version of his journal anyway. Something would happen and I would just ask and he would just talk and I would just kind of keep asking the same way, like he was putting thoughts in his journal. So there ended up being a lot of parallels between what we had captured and what he was putting down just for himself. And I thought it was just absolutely amazing that he would open that up to everyone. Like, I can't imagine giving my personal journals to somebody and be like, just go for it. And then you tell me what you want to put on HBO. I was like, okay. But yeah, he just really wanted it to have that level of proximity to his personal side of things.
The series finale is coming up on June 9th. What are you most excited about, and what do you want fans to expect and fans to be most excited about as we get ready for this release?
Yeah, I think, I'm a big hockey fan, Avs fan, and I think when I see people come back after injury, I'm always so curious as like, what does it really take and what is it really like? So we do like the conditioning stint in episode 5 is the conditioning stint at the Colorado Eagles up in Loveland, maybe like 45 minutes, an hour north of here. So we kind of dive into that. But then it's like the camera just follows Gabe, the day before the road trip to Dallas with his family of the nerves are right there. Like he's going to go he'd been on the road before with the boys here and there, but like never with the intent of playing. Maybe like skating and getting some drills and stuff, but like game jersey on type of thing. Didn't end up playing, and we didn't know that at the time. But then we go to Dallas with him and follow him for a couple days in Dallas, and I'm like right there with him, and I'm like, oh, this tweet says you're playing tonight. Are you playing tonight? And he's like, I don't know where they get that information, and like kind of just go like blow for blow of that. I guess it was like a Monday to Thursday or something like that of just about every day, and then start at 6:30 in the morning at his house the day of game 3 and just is there. I think we filmed, he was playing a game. You didn't film. We weren't filming together, but I was kind of like in his pocket from like 6:30 in the morning until almost 2 in the morning the next day. So I hope what fans see is what it really looks like to come back. Again, not working out or how do you get into shape, but like the nerves, again, like he just doesn't want to let folks down. He really wants to perform. He wants to be with a team and to be that person. We try to explore that a bit in episode 6. And I think, I've been editing it the entire up until just now. And I hope it's really fun. And I hope what we're trying to evoke is, I was obviously in the building. There were 19,500 other people in the building. I don't know how many people were watching on television, but the vibe was electric. It was just buzzing. You could be in the basement press box and you would hear people chanting and stomping their feet and everything. And it was just wild. And knowing what that meant to Gabe, having been there for so long. So hopefully we can replicate that energy for folks who weren't able to be in the building of like, maybe this is a bit what it was like.
AJ, we're very grateful for you and for Christina for reaching out to let us use our platform for you to tell your story. I know all 4 of us are going to have the Kleenex ready, and I'm sure it's going to be even more emotional for you as the finale comes out. A Clean Sheet, episode 6 airs on TNT and streams on Max June 9th. AJ, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And again, we are beyond excited to watch it with everybody coming up in a couple days.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been really fun. You guys are all great. Looking forward to it.